Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me for this new edition of Business Africa. On our show today, we head for the DRC to put the spotlight on biodegradable packaging and then Gabon to understand why pangolins are still being hunted by traffickers. But first, let's get on with the show with our top stories today. Biodegradable packaging and bags. This is the ecological solution developed by a Goma company to reduce plastic pollution.
Plastic bags are still circulating in Goma, but we can't claim to have eradicated them. We aim to phase out the use of plastic bags, but it's a struggle.
The merging of two Central African stock exchanges has succeeded in convincing investors who are more and more interested in the regional financial market of Douala.
We, as professionals, are very satisfied because it still allows us to have a common discourse vis-à-vis those wishing to invest in the stock markets or to float their companies.
A highly sought-after animal for its meat and scales, it has become an object of all traffic. Despite being protected, the Gabonese pangolin is still being hunted by smugglers. For the Gabonese, the pangolin is killed for consumption. Pangolins are among the most popular game as bushmeat, in fact. Reducing non-recyclable packaging such as plastic bags may still appear to be an insurmountable challenge in Africa. And yet, it is from a region in full instability that we discovered a remarkable example of biodegradable packaging. Frank Kika, a young Congolese entrepreneur from the city of Goma in the province of North Kivu in eastern DRC, has thus succeeded in setting up his company, Mitten, an ecological solution financed by his own funds and which contributes to multiple job creations. Our correspondent in Goma, Daniel Michombero, tells us more. Take a look. Frank Kika, 38 years old, a young Congolese entrepreneur from Goma, passionate about the environment and the well-being of his fellow citizens, has created a factory of biodegradable packaging to help preserve the environment. Two kinds of packaging are produced here at the Mitten Power Factory: craft paper packaging and non-woven fabric packaging. The goal is to phase out plastic packaging, a plague for nature.
We want to provide the east of the DRC with craft paper packaging and non-woven fabric packaging.
The Mitten Power Factory is located in the Kishero district of Goma. Several young people from the town have found a job here. Some have been hired to work in the factory, others to sell biodegradable packaging at the company's retail outlets. These rolls, imported from neighboring countries, such as Tanzania and Uganda, are used in the Mitten Power Factory to produce packaging. The plant operates 3 machines, 2 for the manufacture of fabric packaging and 1 for paper packaging.
Here, they are cut according to the length ordered. The control path is on the other side. It's digital. All the orders are being made there. The speed, the required size, everything is done here. This machine can make up to 200 pieces a minute.
For Frank Kika, his struggle is both economic and environmental, but the ongoing war in North Kivu province is hampering progress on this prestigious ecological project.
Plastic bags are still circulating in Goma, but we can't claim to have eradicated them. We aim to phase out the use of plastic bags, but it's a struggle. It's a battle that requires the constant support of several bodies, particularly the political and administrative authorities. We are in contact with them daily, but others in neighbouring countries aren't crossing their arms as plastic packaging manufactured over there is flooding our market here. It's forbidden in their countries, but they come and sell it here as if it were a dump. The fight is ongoing, but it takes a lot of work.
The fight against global warming is a daily battle for some Congolese. Olivier and Douala, a green lawyer working with the Congolese Alert for the Environment and Human Rights, calls for better support for committed entrepreneurs like Frank Kika.
Thanks to these entrepreneurs, Congo contributes to reducing its carbon footprint, not only in economic terms, as the state will be able to receive taxes, but also in terms of the commitment of young people in this situation and in unstable areas where armed groups of often random young people. These responsible entrepreneurs are helping the state to provide a framework for these young people and to achieve the social and economic rights that are in our constitution.
Frank is seeking to expand his activities even further to preserve nature against the effects of climate change. One of his projects is plastic waste collections by young people. The aim is to recycle and convert these used plastics into biodegradable packaging. In addition, the entrepreneur also plans to sign partnerships with other local companies involved in the fight against plastic pollution in North Kivu. And precisely in Ghana, the Ministry of the Environment is in the process of preparing a bill to force producers of plastic packaging to take charge of waste related to their activities. This would be the end of the voluntary regime and the beginning of a new extended producer responsibility doctrine. Remember that in West Africa alone, the production of plastic waste is estimated at 840,000 tons per year. The French banking group Societe Generale is refining its African strategy. According to the Ecomatin media, the bank is considering an asset management deployment and has filed a request with the Cameroonian authorities. The launch of the first mutual fund is expected by the end of the year. These projects follow the announcement of talks between the African banking groups, Vista and Chorus on the one hand, and Societe Generale on the other for the sale of its Congolese, Chadian and Guinean subsidiaries in Africa. And now we stay in Central Africa, where the two CEMAC financial markets, the Economic and Monetary Community of Central Africa, have merged. The Douala Stock Exchange and the Libreville Central African Stock Exchange have become one. This new regional stock exchange, located in Douala, had a hard time convincing rather cautious investors. But it succeeded its bet thanks to successful bond issues. To find out more, Abubakar Munchidi visited this stock exchange, the gateway to a vast regional financial market. Take a look.
We are at the headquarters of the Central African Securities Exchange, the BVMAC, in the heart of the Aqua Business District in Douala, the economic capital of Cameroon. It became the only stock exchange in the sub-region. A real hope in the CEMAC zone, the Central African Economic and Monetary Community.
Nous avons, depuis le 4 juillet 2019,
since July the 4th, 2019, we have witnessed the merger-acquisition of Douala Stock Exchange, which was the Cameroon Stock Exchange and the Central African Securities Exchange, namely the BVMAC, whose headquarters were in Libreville. The heads of states had, therefore, decided to integrate the financial markets of Central Africa. We, as professionals, are very satisfied because it still allows us to have a common discourse vis-à-vis those wishing to invest in the stock markets or to float their companies.
For nearly 16 years, from 2003 to 2019, the CEMAC zone was indeed marked by the coexistence of two competing stock markets, resulting in painful consequences for the local business community.
We suffered a lot from the fact that there were two active stock exchanges, two regulatory bodies in the CEMAC zone. Thus, it did not allow issuers and all those who wanted to float their companies on the stock market to be able to choose one financial centre or another.
Since then, the single stock exchange and two key players have been driving the financial market in the sub-region. First, the regulator, which is the Central African Market Surveillance Commission, CASUMA, then the Bank of Central African States, the BIAC, which acts as a settlement bank.
Au-delà donc de ces acteurs centraux,
Beyond these central players, therefore, we have around 15 brokerage firms that are approved by the regulator, whose role is to serve as an intermediary between the public that needs to invest and the issuers. Next to these actors, who are the intermediaries, there is, of course, the economic operators themselves, because without the economic operators, without investors, without issuers, there is no exchange in the financial markets.
Allios Finance Cameroon is a leasing company. It is among the first companies in Central African sub-region to understand that the arrival of the stock exchange represented a great opportunity for the business community in the sub-region.
On an experimental aspect, at the beginning, we did have some questions. But I must say that it was rather a great experience, a great success. The players in the stock market in Central Africa are in fact listening to companies. We were looking for 8 billion CFAF. We had a subscription rate of 110%. It means that there really is a need for institutional investors on this market. For the past 2 or 3 years, we have been listed on the Douala Stock Exchange, and things are going very well.
In just 4 months, for example, between December 2020 and March 2021, 3 fundraising operations were recorded. Other loans and the IPO of public companies from different CMAC countries are announced and expected on the regional stock exchange. Performance that still poorly reflects the economic potential of the CMAC zone.
There is some reluctance. I believe that it's a problem of stock market culture, communication and training of various economic actors. So our programs today essentially go in that direction, namely to promote the Central African Securities Exchange in Douala, to make the place attractive, create more awareness among students, for example. We want them to consider taking finance and stock market into account in their training, and even start from the primary school level. From the grassroots to the highest level, people should be able to understand how the stock markets are essential to fund their businesses and activities. Also, to be able to invest their savings in a safe and credible way. So that's the job we're doing now. You cannot have a solid CMAC economy without a performing stock market. We cannot do without a stock exchange. So it is absolutely necessary that the stock market thrives. So we are working a lot today on the regulatory framework to change, improve the various CMAC regulatory texts to make the regulatory framework of the stock market more competitive.
The CMAC zone is destined to have a performing financial market if it wants to pursue and consolidate its economic development. A myriad of incentives, plus the willingness of the players and the growing enthusiasm of companies for the Central African Stock Exchange, are proof that the sub-region of the African continent can become a land of opportunity for many investors and businesses.
Welcome to the second part of our show. The summit for a new global financial pact was held in Paris last month. Many African heads of state had made the trip to express a consensus in favor of an international financial architecture more fair and suitable to the countries of the South, as well as the vagaries related to climate. Several developments were noted during this two-day summit, such as an agreement to restructure the Zambian debt, which could pave the way for other settlements in Africa, but also the decision to include a suspensive debt clause for climatic hazards in the statutes of development banks. And it was back from this summit that the leaders of Ethiopia took a drastic decision The country in the east of the continent submitted an application to join the BRICS group, which is made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. A spokesman for the Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that for Ethiopia, a founding member of multilateral institutions like the African Union and the United Nations, it is important to join blocs like BRICS, he said, I quote, to safeguard our national interests. This is a setback for Rwanda. The country had hoped to welcome asylum seekers from the United Kingdom and had signed a £120 million agreement with London to do so. But here it is. The British Court of Appeal rejected the government's plan, deeming the programme illegal and Rwanda unsafe for welcoming refugees, a judgment that Kigali found hurtful. We challenged the decision that Rwanda is not a safe country for asylum seekers and refugees, said government spokesperson Yolande Makolo. The dangers of wildlife trafficking have been particularly highlighted during the COVID-19 pandemic. This has not prevented some smuggling circuits from prospering in Gabon, in particular one of the habitats of pangolins. These nocturnal, solitary insect eaters are highly sought after for their meat and scales, especially in Asia. Considerable traffic has developed in several African countries. However, the animal has been part of the protected species for several years. Our correspondent in Gabon, Jean-Louis Debani, followed the case by questioning the protectors of pangolins on the persistence of this traffic. Take a look.
In Lanope National Park, a few hours from the capital Libreville, a team of scientists anesthetize a giant pangolin. A transmitter will be installed to geolocate the species. The specimen, which weighs 40 kilos, will then be released into its natural environment. The fate of this animal, little known to the general public, is worrying researchers. The mammal, sought after for its reputedly tasty meat and its scales, has become the most poached in the world. Since 2020, the pangolin has been suspected by researchers of having transmitted the coronavirus. In Gabon, new laws have been passed prohibiting its capture, marketing, and consumption. On the stalls of this Libreville market, the species has been ratified and the traders have lost their best customers. Before the epidemic, the sale of the pangolin, although prohibited, was a good business. Chinese buyers came when the market opened to snatch up all the vendors' supply. Today, sellers are struggling to make even a small margin.
Before, people came to the market to buy the pangolin, but we were told not to sell it anymore. 1, it is prohibited by the Ministry of Water and Forests. 2, the pangolin is said to have brought the coronavirus, so we don't sell pangolins anymore. I know that people like to eat the pangolin, but we no longer sell it because we respect the instructions of the Waters and Forests Ministry.
The pangolin trade has been banned since 2016, but many Gabonese are unaware of it. The anti-poaching NGO, Conservation Justice, regularly sensitizes the villagers. But habits die hard. Conservation Justice claims that mentalities are progressing, but that surveillance should, however, be reinforced.
In several restaurants across the country, pangolin dishes are still offered to customers. But I think it would be interesting for the state to put in place a good mechanism, which already exists, of repression by enforcing the law, aimed precisely at punishing the authors and even the accomplices of this traffic here.
The scientific department of the national parks deplores an explosion of poaching around the species. For this biologist, it is not the meat sold for a few CFA francs that makes the value of the pangolin, but rather its scales, which are sought after at exorbitant prices on the international market.
For the Gabonese, the pangolin is killed for consumption. Pangolins are among the most popular game as bushmeat, in fact. And so the Gabonese will rush to these species for consumption. Now there's a traffic that has been reported internationally. So the traffic of scales that requires harvesting them directly from pangolins in nature, but just the scales are going to be kept. So there's a lot of pressure on pangolins for meat and for scales.
According to this scientist, the finding is striking in northern Gabon, particularly in Mekebe National Park, the largest of the 13 national parks bordering Cameroon, itself bordering Nigeria, real hubs where the kilo trades at 60,000 CFA francs, before joining Asia where it reaches 650,000 CFA francs.
I have not witnessed large seizures of scales like what is happening in Cameroon or Nigeria. For example, in Cameroon in 2017, I witnessed the first incineration of scales in Africa. And it was more than 3 tons of pangolin scales that had been incinerated that year, just after the pangolins were all listed on Appendix 1 of the CITES Convention, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. And then in Nigeria, I attended the seizure of nearly 7 tons of pangolin scales. Huge numbers. These are not figures that I have encountered here in Gabon. And it's not possible that in Nigeria, when there's a seizure of 7 tons of pangolins, that these 7 tons only come from Nigeria. You see, Cameroon and Nigeria function as hubs for the export of these illicit products abroad.
In Gabon, 3 of the 4 African pangolin species live in the forest, which covers 88% of the country. In recent years, the Gabonese Ministry of Water and Forests has increased its vigilance, and since the health crisis, new laws have been adopted to stop poaching in the country. This does not prevent sellers from multiplying strategies and sometimes ending up on dodgy markets.
Speaking of the giant pangolin, you should know that it is a fully protected species. Today, the other 2 species are also protected. There is regulatory text that has just been ratified, which also protects these 2 species. So anyone who exploits the pangolin becomes a pangolin trafficker. So anyone who hunts the pangolin automatically becomes the poacher.
According to Traffic, an NGO based in the United Kingdom, in 7 years, more than 330 tons of pangolins and their scales have been seized in Asia alone, compared to 609 between 2017 and 2019. The NGO explains that this drop is the consequence directly from the measures taken during the COVID-19 period. Authorities have adopted strict wildlife protection standards, and the country is actively working to have the giant pangolin classified as one of the most endangered species in the world.
And that's it for today. Business Africa is over. I'll be back next week, same time, same channel, for Initiative Africa. I'll have the pleasure to speak to the travel blogger Ruben Spitz. In the meantime, you can watch the show on our website, africaonair.com, and follow us on our social media channels. Feel free to share, like, and comment using the hashtag Business Africa. Have a great week, and until next time, goodbye.